open the meeting in a second, but, so there's a couple of announcements ahead of time. This meeting is being recorded, as all our meetings are recorded, which means people can watch from home, people can watch the YouTube at a later time. So that's something that's fairly normal for us these days, as everything is recorded. This is our regular zoning board meeting, and it's not a meeting for where we're taking in public comment or questions and answers. This is really a meeting for us to discuss, debate, and talk about the variance at hand, what we wanna do, what the complications are. When we closed the public meeting 2 meetings ago, that's when we stopped taking comments, even though we did actually take some comments later on at the last meeting. With that said, can I have a motion to open meeting?
Make a motion to open the meeting.
Any second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
I will also pass around a sign-in sheet, highly professional, I apologize. Actually, I've been stealing this. So on our agenda tonight is discussion and hopefully voting on the variance request from Vertex Communications on zoning section 5.3.E.2. And before we open the discussion from the board on this, everyone received the guidance documents from Copeland Page today?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Al?
Yes, I
Okay.
saw it, just, yes.
Okay. So. The legal team at Copeland Page is recommending that we, even though we received a constructive grant notice from Vertex, she's recommending that we do vote on this variance, because it's actually in 2 parts. We need to consider the variance from the point of view of the Hubbardston zoning bylaws, and then part 2 of that is we then need to consider the variance based on the telecommunications, the federal standards, telecommunications. And there's some criteria within the Telecommunication Act that she's suggested that we need to consider. So, based on that, what I'd like to do is have a
Mr. Chair,
discussion on.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yes, sir.
Was legal counsel informed that we filed the notice of constructive grant?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, they have a copy of it. So we can start out the discussion on pros and cons of the variance, but before we do so, wanna make sure you guys saw both, the letter today from Copeland Page, and then the discussion on use variances.
Yes.
Okay. And you wanna start, you want me to start?
I don't know where to start.
Okay, so, part 1, we have a variance for really the driveway. So that's section 5.3.E.2, and it says, no driveway shall provide access to a lot located in another zoning district. If said lot is used for any other use, principal or accessory, that is not permitted in the district which such driveway is located. The driveway or access road to a lot shall be through its frontage. So I have two thoughts on this. The applicant is coming to us because of the shape and topography of the soils at 14 Main Street. And testimony has been given that there's wetlands between Main Street and the proposed location of the tower. And crossing those wetlands is considered a hardship. It really wasn't said, but it also could be said that that could be detrimental to the environment as well. So from that point of view, I think the applicant does have some, it's, reasonable to say we were looking for access some other place. However, if I'm reading the guidance suggested by Kopelman and Page, the problem that we have with that is this is a use variance, and the legal team is saying that we can't issue a variance because of it's a use variance, and we don't have authority to change that use. And I didn't know what you guys read of that, thought of that, and anything else.
So, I mean, I'll just give you the high level of my thoughts reading through this. As I went through it, I thought, sounds to me like we don't have the authority to grant the variance. But then when I get to the last page, based on, and maybe I'm going, like I said, high level.
Yep.
Based on the TCA, for us to deny it.
Well, that's part two, I think.
Okay.
I think we need to vote on how the variance, well, actually, get your opinions. I mean, we could vote on, approval or denial of the variance based on Hubbardson zoning bylaws. Then we can
Right.
talk about the TCA, and the TCA, there was that 4 sets of criteria that we have to measure and judge in order to give that variance at that point. I mean, that was my reading of it. So the other part of that is, and we know Vertex has filed the constructive grant notice. The deadline for the date to actually vote was August 18th. And technically, we would have 2 weeks to publish that vote, which is actually, September 1st. But the fact is, we didn't vote by that date. So, we can almost automatically default to the TCA. But we may wanna just vote on what our feelings are. I mean, because if you think about it, if we came to the conclusion that this variance is warranted, then we don't need to vote for the TCA part of it.
Right.
I agree. I think by reading through their findings, I think that we're not authorized to do it by our zoning bylaws.
But it sounds
I
to me like the
agree.
TC, if we did say
Super.
deny it, we have to really justify it based on that criteria, which I honestly don't know that we can. personal, every feelings about it aside,
Mhm.
cause I
Right.
have them,
Mhm.
that's just, I feel that this almost overrides, unless we really have strong reasons based on the zoning
Mhm.
and this to deny it.
So, an important
I
sentence in
mean,
it.
this changed
Right.
everything for me.
Yeah, the last page, it says, any denial must be supported by a writing setting forth substantial evidence found in the record or elicited at the public hearings, and not just statutory criteria. So if we're not just following our own zoning bylaws, our own zoning statutory criteria,
Mhm.
then the TCA supersedes anything that we can or can't do. If, I might have mentioned it last, if we were here looking to approve a horse path or riding stables or something like that, I don't think we would have had 3 hearings about it. We would have allowed a use variance, we would have approved, based on the hardship items. I get it that this is a lot more, there's a lot, more high profile,
Okay.
but I do think that the TCA that kind of stipulates what we have to.
Mhm.
And just to add to that, for everybody's benefit, I mean, it does state in here too, other things like, we don't have the authority to hold back telecommunications and cell service from the town people, and it just sounds to me like it's just not there.
You mean from the zoning aspect or the TCA aspect?
No, I think the TCA,
Is the bigger discussion?
yeah,
Okay.
I think so, I mean, because I think it spells out pretty much
Mhm.
what we can and can't do
Yep.
based on, input from the lawyer, and again, this changed everything for me.
Yeah, it did clarify a lot of things.
Yep, so,
Al, your thoughts?
I think, I don't necessarily agree with the interpretation of TCA overruling a local board. Okay. Going back, I don't think we're unreasonably discriminating amongst providers or functional equivalents of services. So I don't
Agreed.
think we're doing that.
mhm,
Okay. And I don't think we are prohibiting the effect of prohibiting the provision of personal wireless services. I don't think we're doing that. Right?
Okay.
So in other words, going back to any decision, when you build a house, they tell you where your septic system is going. And you make adjustments to where the house is based on where the septic system could be. Right?
Mhm.
Okay. We're building a house. We're can either say, yeah, you can build it wherever you want, oh, that's a good spot, you can build it there. Or you can say, no, that's really not the best place to put it. We prefer it here. That's not discriminating. You're just saying, no, you can't put a house within 100 feet of water, of a stream, or 150 feet. You can't do that, you can't do this, you can't do that. These are accepted practices. So I don't think we're discriminating at one iota,
I agree with you,
so.
there
So-
was more to but
If
Do
we,
we-
if we want,
It's hard.
if we want to return, return to a time where anyone and everyone can just walk in, man, woman, business, etc., and say, well, I own this, I wanna do it, I'm entitled. We don't have that. We wouldn't allow it.
Mhm.
So I don't see
yeah, I just, for me,
that.
the TCA makes this unique
Mhm.
Correct.
than others, cause I
Absolutely.
thought we've denied variances for signs and,
Correct. TCA is just
You
like
know,
this
so-
big umbrella hanging over our head.
yes,
Right,
yes.
right. from my perspective, I'll just ignore them and say what's right for the town and the people here.
So.
That's me.
So from a strategy point of view, do we wanna take a vote on the zoning aspect from the Hubbardston aspect first? Or put it all together into one?
So we could do that, but what's, which one counts, what's, you know, or
Well, if we
if we vote,
that we would approve, I mean, I guess if we were to vote to approve the variance from the zoning board, and I'm not suggesting we do that, I'm just, because our legal team says we can't do that.
we can't do what,
From the Hubbardston zoning bylaws, we can't issue a variance, a use variance in this situation. She said it was specifically prohibited in 10.1. So if we don't, so.
well, then it would have to go.
Then I would like to go through just the steps of the TCA to make sure cause she suggested we follow that criteria, take notes and make sure and whatever our final ruling is, that gets published, on or before September 1st. That we have the correct findings, the evidence, and the reasons why, and that we followed these steps, is what she's recommended.
So, just in that case, should we go through the TCA first? I mean,
And then do it all,
and then, I guess I'm not sure, we're gonna have two votes?
well, I was thinking that we would have two votes, but I wanted your opinions on
Yeah,
that.
I don't. To me, it's up or down. I don't know, I don't know.
think it's, yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of in an agreement that we're not authorized through our own zoning laws. So if we're making a decision, then we can base it off of TCA
Mhm.
with the understanding that we know we're not typically authorized to make this type of a call.
So, let's do this, let's vote on, cause the original application was for, 5.3.E.2. Let's vote on that, then we can go into part 2 and we'll go through the TCA. How
Okay.
would that work?
Yep.
So is there a motion, from the board on the variance as presented by the applicant based on our zoning bylaws?
I'll make a motion to reject the variance based on our Hubbardston's zoning bylaws.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, just as a reminder, because we have 4 members, it would have to be 100%, whatever our vote is. Okay?
Yep.
All in favor of denying the variance for 5.3.E.2, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? None? Okay, let's take part 2. Part 2 is the TCA.
Mr. Chairman, if I could please ask that when we refer to any correspondence provided by legal counsel or through the town, then contained within the papers that were provided to us today, that we refer to what we're reading and where we're reading it from, please?
Yes.
Thank you.
So on page 5 of the Copeland and Page document, the legal counsel suggests that we we can grant a use variance based on the TCA. And under the TCA, we have, technically, we have additional time to go through that. The planning board actually has 150 days, plus or minus, based on their criteria. But we need to go through this variance, the driveway variance. We're not talking about the antenna, the monopole versus lattice, anything of that nature. We're just talking about the driveway from Brigham Road up to the site of the proposed antenna. And we can grant a variance under the TCA, and it would be a use variance, but we need to go through the criteria. And the first question is, does the applicant meet the definition of a personal wireless service facility under the TCA? Page 5.
I'm not seeing that on page 5.
Your page 5 might be different than
Yeah, it might be.
Page 5. Here.
Thank you.
So this section right here.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah. A through E.
Yeah. So does the applicant meet the definition of a personal wireless service facilities per the TCA, chapter 332, section 7C? My suggestion is, yeah, I mean, that's obvious, right? That they, Vertex Communications is, that's what they do.
Right.
Can we have a reading of TCA 32C? Is it contained in our notes?
It is not that I've seen. Next is determine whether the demonstrated coverage gap is being addressed and there are no feasible alternative sites. So, we have seen I mean, we know there's gaps in Hubbardston. We have seen the Vertex's engineers provided studies that there is, this will cover the gap located in the primary service area, which is the center part of Hubbardston. What we haven't seen is, if other sites also cover that gap. So in other words, we have the overlay district, and then we have any other areas that could potentially qualify. But we do know that this covers a gap, right? Am I missing something on that?
Well, based on the gap coverage maps, yes, it does. Right, I mean. That's new, that's old. I don't know how. No,
I have. Thank you. Thank you very much, Ron, I'd like to see that.
yeah,
That's the new,
that's the proposed, right,
Yeah.
coverage,
yeah.
and that's, oops, sorry, I just
That's all
wrote
right,
that.
that's all right.
And that's current.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much.
So
I mean, are
would
we
say that's a
comfortable?
yes.
Yeah, are everyone comfortable with that?
I wouldn't, I wouldn't necessarily consider it to be a gap, because it seems like the current map and the current map and the projected map basically just repeats primarily. It doesn't extend to the furthest most corners of
Yeah,
the
I
town.
wouldn't say it's it's
Right, exactly,
significant.
right. Would you say
And later on, we can
significant?
talk, that's something in here later on, but
Mhm.
it's hard to,
Right,
like, I know where I live, before and after, it still isn't on there.
Right, exactly. So I don't know if
But I
it
get
really
covered somewhere.
materially improves, you know, significant is a word of choice.
Mhm.
But I don't know if it significantly improves
Yes.
coverage or expands coverage for that matter. It marginally expands coverage, absolutely.
However, when we had talked about some of the gap issues in Hubbardston, I think there was testimony that stated that's not gonna cover every gap in Hubbardston. You know, you get down those hills and valleys of even Williamsville Road, I doubt anything's going to, you know, help that
Right.
out.
Al, are you saying that we need more than one cell tower?
No, I'm saying that without engineering discussion of placement, where we could get where the town could get the biggest bang for the buck, there may be alternative sites for a tower, not necessarily a vortex tower, maybe who knows who makes towers. But instead of putting it here, if we put it here, we get the coverage in the center of town plus an expansive coverage at other ends of the town. And we have nothing to go by. We have a plan through the zoning board at the time that gave the town a handful of sites that were amenable for a tower. But as far as any correspondence or any type of information that would assist one in arriving at a strong and logical conclusion that site A is better than site M, we don't have it.
But we do know that there are gaps. I mean, we know there's gaps right in this room, in this location. And a tower in this part of town would address at least some of the gaps within town. You know, at the last meeting, I asked a question, of the applicant if they were involved in the new tower going up in Westminster, as well, and I think the answer was no, and I guess I should have known, because it's not Westminster isn't building a tower, they're putting the antennas on, a pre-existing water tower. But, you know, we're gonna have, you know, more towers, say in Gardner and Westminster, and, you know, who knows if they're gonna put another tower on Wachusett or even Rutland. So we're gonna start slowly getting surrounded by services. So for example, at Gail's house or at my house, you know, this tower in the center of town, if we were to grant this variance under the TCA, may not work at my house, maybe it would, I don't really know. But, you know, perhaps another tower in another location, you know, be it in Westminster or otherwise, might help me out as well.
But if you look at the maps, there's one spot here on the original map, right below the word N. Okay, looks like a small island, right there.
Right here?
No, right where my index, my finger is.
Okay.
And it still exists even with the expansion.
Yeah, but I think you're gonna have that though.
I wonder why though.
Right.
You know,
I don't know.
See, and that's my point about placement.
Or is that where it would be?
No, cause that's not the way it was in the maps, right?
Yeah, it makes you
Coverage.
wonder.
Makes you wonder, right? Cause we're putting it literally right in the center of the
Is this
town.
accurate, or is that, yeah, that's odd. It's right there.
It's right there to see.
Oh,
I apologize for
No,
using
no,
your
no, no, I
stuff.
just-
I didn't mean to
I'm lost.
you know, it would be infinitely helpful if,
No, you know what I think that is? I think that's Brigham Pond. I think that's why it looks like that, cause other ponds are, do you see what I'm saying?
Yep,
It's Brigham Pond. see the others? Comet Pond. Where's mine? Right here, here's the pond where I live, that's what that is.
It would be infinitely more helpful if the town had its own independent coverage study done.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah. Or even supporting documents based on what they did when they arrived at the, 6 to 10 sites that they refer to in zoning?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think that would be unreasonable to have.
And I don't know how they arrived at those sites. You know, if the study was done then, I
Exactly.
don't remember.
Exactly.
And significant gap test, is that under? That's.
But we do have a gap
And one
test
might-
and we do have gaps, and will this improve those gaps, significant or not?
And so I think significant is up for interpretation.
Yeah. Probably not.
What is that?
I was just gonna ask about the shot clock with the TEC and, you know, is it, do we have time to
That would-
fully, do we have time to fully explore the TEC?
That would be up to the planning board, I think. But would we have time? I think the date is October 7th. So
It's in here
I think
somewhere,
it's,
I
I
think.
think it's tight.
Is that your timeframe too then?
No, planning board has, the planning board has different, timeframes, you know, even how the timeframes start. I mean, our clock technically starts when the applicant, gives the package to the town clerk. Theirs doesn't start until the first hearing.
Right.
So it's apples and oranges for our timeframes, and
So do you have any shot clock at all, or is it the shot clock the same as the planning board?
our shot clock expired technically on August 18th.
Right.
Yeah, it says here. that-
Except under the TCA, then we have until September 1st, if I remember
tomorrow.
correctly. Thursday. I think,
Thursday.
yeah.
So does one supersede the other? But it does say here that
Thank you.
our voting clock did expire, but we can appeal that if we wanted to.
Well,
Right,
that's,
if I'm reading
but
that right.
we're gonna have to have that discussion at the end,
Oh, okay.
is next steps. Yes.
Okay.
So, can we say we do have a coverage gap, and this is gonna at least help some of that coverage gap? Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So the next is, are there any other feasible alternative sites? And that goes back to the significant gap test. And then the last bit, and I'm not sure how we can answer if there's a feasible alternative site, we don't know that.
We don't know. Court said that the board is required to approve the application if the proposed tower is the only feasible plan.
Can I ask where you're reading from, please?
Oh, right
Oh,
below.
right below?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's
Thank
the
you.
only feasible plan that's presented to us right now.
That's
If we
correct.
had multiple plans,
And
then we would have
denying the
multiple
application
options to
effective.
consider.
Yep, I
So it
agree.
is the only feasible plan, and denying the application effectively amounts to a prohibition.
On personal wireless services.
And then what about
Yeah,
item
but,
B?
but read the last 8 words, 8 to 12 words. Amounts to prohibition on personal wireless service in the area. Again, we're not doing that.
If we don't grant a variance,
We're
Aren't
not,
we
we're not
effectively
prohibiting
prohibiting
personal
self-service?
wireless service. I just got,
There's service.
I just got 2 texts
But are you on the
With-
wireless?
without,
Are you on
yeah, I got it
Wi-Fi?
right here.
No,
without-
are you on the
Your
wireless
cell?
points, the town's wireless, are you on cell?
Wi-Fi.
Oh, I'm on the town's wireless.
Yeah, so.
So, yeah, I mean, I can't get texts or calls or anything,
Okay, so, I mean,
outside or inside.
we're not prohibiting, actively prohibiting the use of personal wireless in the area.
We're just
by
Well,
saying that we want a
if you're-
different location, or are there different locations?
But if you're across the street and not, and you don't have access to this wireless, do you have service right outside here? Or do you have service over by the school if we're talking about the wireless link covers this side, this building?
But we're not gonna be able to provide service for the whole town anyway, even if we,
Right.
so I guess that's.
But I don't think
what
this,
is that
this
really?
antenna, this tower is gonna cover the whole town.
Right, so
And that's the problem is, we're trying to judge it based on everyone gets service, and I'm not sure if
Yeah,
that's a
it's-
reality.
right. But there could be the argument, well, I'm still not getting it, so
Mhm.
I'm prohibited, even if the tower goes up.
But then, I mean, Vertex could add another, you know,
Yeah,
realistically
so
add
if,
another
but
tower
yeah.
coverage gap somewhere else also.
Mm-hmm.
But if we don't grant the variance, I feel like we are effectively prohibiting personal cell use, because nobody can go outside and use a cell phone if you're not on Wi-Fi. So if we don't grant the variance, we are prohibiting personal cell phone use.
Matter of opinion.
I mean, I agree with you. I
We all have, right, we all have our own feelings about
Yeah,
wanting a
this
tower,
is-
and not in my backyard either.
Well, see, I'm not even, like, cause that's tough. I'm
Right.
just trying to base it on what we have in front of us.
Right, and we're not really judging the tower itself, because that's not within our jurisdiction for the zoning board. You know, I will say it is in the overlay district, so it's a permitted use in the overlay district.
Yep.
You know, whether that's right or wrong, or the right or the wrong, that's what it is.
And then there's the next whole section,
Yes.
which talks about,
Does the literal application of the zoning bylaws materially inhibit service? E.
oh, okay, oh.
It would,
yeah.
and that's why we voted to reject it based on our zoning bylaws.
I would disagree. I live on High Street, and I get once again, I get calls all the time on my phone. So I'm in the district. So I would tend to disagree with that thought.
That's about E?
About 7A. Yeah, yes.
Oh, I think we're talking two different things. The last one in the section we were talking
I
about.
thought we were talking about 7A.
Are we there yet? I thought we just did E,
No,
determine when
we-
the literal application of the zoning bylaw materially
Materially
inhibits
inhibits.
service, so I guess that's the same as kinda above.
Again, I would, even on that one, I would say no, because I have a phone within the district that works.
So it's not everybody, it's up
Right.
here, it's,
I mean, I live right by Breezy Hill
So
Corner.
you're saying that we don't have the gaps?
No, I'm not saying we don't have the gaps. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it works.
Well, is it again because you're hooked to Wi-Fi, or you're getting cell tower service?
Cell tower service.
I mean, it is, like, you look at the actual map, there's service.
Mm-hmm.
I lost it again. In your High Street,
Right.
yeah, right there.
So I,
I don't know, to go through the next section, or maybe that will
Yep.
help, I don't know. Preservation and local zoning authority.
Again, going back we don't have TCA 332C, okay?
Mhm.
But their own guidance, which we have in print in front of us that we're referring to their act, says, except as provided in this paragraph, nothing in this act shall limit or affect the authority of a state or local government or instrumentality thereof over decisions regarding the placement, construction, and modification of personal wireless service facility. So right there, they're saying, you guys decide what's best,
Mhm. So,
in a
Then
nutshell,
there's
right?
limitations.
so,
That's-
okay, with
you know,
that
it's-
in mind then,
yeah.
okay,
Okay,
we need to vote under the TCA, under that extended timeframe about the driveway. So, owing to the shape, topography of the lot where the tower is proposed, is it reasonable to use the driveway off of Brigham to access it?
let's broaden our understanding of that paragraph, especially the last two sentences.
Okay.
If I could, please.
Yeah.
Okay? Therefore, state or local government or instrumentality thereof over the decisions regarding the placement, constructions, or modifications. We, in our zoning bylaws, had or have construction limitations.
Mhm.
They're not gonna affect that. They're not gonna challenge that. They've already told us that. We tried to seek modification of the tower, okay? I think we brought up, or somebody brought up, either in conjunction with the planning board or us alone, going from, a monopole tower, or I'm gonna call it the pyramid tower, or
So-
as
so to the
council did
last.
that, they
Yep.
called it Charlie Brown Tower.
Mhm.
What they're telling us is they're not gonna challenge our zoning bylaws for modifications of this service.
Mhm.
So
But,
I'm not gonna get hung up on TCA.
okay, but the TCA allows us to be able to vote on the variance application. So, I think we need to
Outside
dis-
of our zoning
yes.
based.
So, under the TCA, we're allowed to give this variance. So,
As I said, courts have held that a board is required to approve the application if the proposed tower is the only feasible plan,
Mhm.
and denying the application effectively amounts to a prohibition on personal wireless service in the area.
okay, but we're not talking about that, we're talking about the driveway to access it. The
Right,
planning board
right.
the planning board is
That's
gonna
their thing.
tackle it, yes.
Yeah, okay, that's where it gets,
So,
so what did they provide us most regarding the driveway?
so the driveway, actually, our own zoning bylaws has some very specific requirements for the driveway.
Under the TCA, right?
No,
Did I see
under,
something?
under
Oh.
our own zoning bylaws.
Oh, okay.
Um, So, the construction of that driveway would have to fit our zoning bylaws, and it talks about the amount of crushed stone, things that it has to be packed.
Three point three.
all access roads, it's 18.5.1.e. All access roads to a communication facility shall be 12 feet to 15 feet in width, depending upon terrain, and shall be composed of 12 inches of compacted gravel, over which is laid down a 3-inch layer of crushed stone. And so we actually spell out what the driveway has to be that to access that site. And it'll be really up to the planning board to enforce, modify, change, or require those aspects of it.
Right, that's not us either,
Right.
Um,
So there was a lot of testimony talking about drainage from the road and however, I mean, we define the road already, so that's already in our bylaw. So the question at hand is, under the TCA, how do we feel about granting the variance under 5.3.E.2 for the driveway from Brigham Street up to the site of the proposed tower?
Can I just bring up one other section on page 3? Paragraph, I think it's 4, it says, the proposed tower is located in the town center zoning district, while the parcels off Brigham Street are located in residential, we know that. According to section 4.2 of the zoning bylaws, radio, television, and communication transmission towers with a maximum height of 150 are permitted in the residential agricultural zone by special permit. However, Article 18 of the zoning bylaws specifically addresses wireless communication facilities, and section 18.3.3, which is in the bylaws, creates a wireless communication overlay district that includes the town center district plus certain other parcels, but not including the 2 parcels identified in this application.
Yep.
In my opinion, the more specific provision of the zoning bylaws prevails, such that the proposed wireless communication tower is not a use allowed by right or special permit in the residential agricultural zone.
So what you're saying is,
And that's,
like we voted a few minutes
it's
ago,
kind of the same thing.
it is the same thing.
Right.
It's just under a different section.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's why it's
So that would make the roadway moot, right?
Yeah.
But the next paragraph, the last line in it, however, as explained in more detail below, the ZBA could grant the various use under TCA.
right,
Yeah.
you could,
So that's
right.
the caveat.
So basically,
Well, we,
it's still
we-
up to,
I mean, I guess technically, I mean, our timeframe had ended on Hubbardston, town of Hubbardston zoning bylaws. So it's, you know, we do have opportunity under the TCA to approve or deny the variance.
and that is as of Thursday.
Yeah, we need to get it posted by Thursday.
Okay.
More discussion? Are we ready for a vote? I'm not gonna take really any questions or public comment this time, Ed.
So we're not in a public hearing anymore, we're doing TCA now, so why wouldn't we be able to publicly comment? This is short.
Okay, I'll allow it.
On
Mr.
page
Chair, I believe the public hearing is closed. Are you reopening the public hearing so that I'd have an opportunity to comment as well?
We need to close.
No, we're closed. You're right.
Thank you.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, do I have a motion on the variance
No, this is under the TCA.
under the TCA?
I will make a motion to deny the variance under the TCA based on that. I mean, we'll have to write that up.
Yep.
Based on 18.3.3, and then in here it says, chapter 40A, No, wait a minute, TCA, it doesn't, does it reference in here, I don't know if it references in here what part of the TCA? Governed by the TCA, no, chapter 40A.
I actually, when we're done, I started the process to prep. Whatever, I'm not sure if Mallory's gonna write that as she normally does, but knowing Mallory is,
She's still with
part-time
us?
part-time at
Yeah.
best.
We might have to get assistance through the town administrator to get this written, because Mallory only works
Yep.
Monday, Tuesday nights.
So I started a quick template of it, but I didn't fill in any details, just more of the minutia. But we can go over that afterwards. So I have a, motion on the floor, to deny the variance. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
No.
All in favor of denying the variance, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the motion is denied, I mean, the variance is denied. Next up on our agenda, Vertex Communications has communicated with the town that they have taken their right for a constructive grant and given notice to the town that they would like the town to post that due to inaction of the zoning board that the variance is approved. Now, we have 20 days to, as a town, and to appeal that decision. And if we do that, it goes to Superior Land Court or Land Court, depending on how my understanding is it goes to one of those two directions as defined by what Copeland and Page would like to do. This isn't, at the end of the day, our decision whether or not we take the next step, but as a board, I told Sandra Nason that we would share our thoughts if we want to appeal that constructive grant notice by Vertex. What are our thoughts on that? Do we want to,
I guess I don't understand, if we don't, like, what are the options?
if we don't, my understanding is if we do not appeal that decision, the town clerk will post that the variance was granted. There'll be, which she should have done by now. We'll have, there's a 20-day waiting period while people in abutters can appeal. I'm not quite sure how, in this case, how the process will go next. I'll more than likely consult with Copeland and Page at what the next steps are. So if there's no appeal, they get the variance, it gets posted
So the,
in the registry of deeds, and they can proceed from this point. However, they still need special permit by the planning board.
so the vote that we just took based on the TCA, where does that have any standing? I mean,
Yeah, isn't that the interesting question? I have to ask Copeland and Page what that is going to do. Yeah.
cause I mean, we denied both
Yep,
as a board,
yep.
don't we
Now,
kinda
now it gets,
have to?
now it gets interesting.
Don't we have to? I mean,
Have to what?
I don't know if
Appeal?
the word is have to. Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be what makes sense?
I agree with you 100%.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean,
What'd you say, Al? You
I
agree?
would agree with her interpretation.
Yeah.
otherwise it's all
I
like,
can-
I haven't slept.
I can communicate with Sandy, either tonight, tomorrow, and say, we suggest that we appeal this.
And see what happens.
I think I know from doing some reading about the action of when the paperwork was presented to the town clerk and when it was dated, maybe there was some confusion on the parts of people as they handled this paperwork. And we were operating under the belief that our internal ZBA clock didn't start until May versus early April. And it's a lot of information to digest in a matter of less than 8 hours.
Yep.
So I would hope that if it were go to a hearing, that would be part of the consideration.
From past experience on the zoning board has been served notice for any type of legal ramification. The lawyers do all that work, we don't do anything of
Yeah,
that,
right,
so
right.
it's so, you know, we can recommend to the town administrator and the board of selectmen that we do pursue the appeal. I think they'll, at the end of the day, decide yes or no. Probably in, you know, consultation with us and consultation with the planning board. We also have the question out there, and I plan on investigating this as well, as can, under this scenario, can an abutter also appeal? Because if this is a typical variance and we said we approve the variance and it gets posted with the town clerk, anyone within 20 days can appeal that decision. So we don't know the answer to that today, but
There could be other
there-
appeals, is what
there
you're
could-
saying.
Exactly, exactly.
against.
You know, if,
Yeah. That's the system, right?
Yep. Yep. So I will communicate that to Sandra Nason either tonight or tomorrow. So I guess, and I'll update the zoning board of that. I'll also find out from either Sandra or Mallory about the writing of the minutes and the decision.
Oh, yeah.
Like I said, I have a lot of notes taken already that I'll communicate, and then we'll go from there. And even if we end up using Copeland and Page to help write this, we'll get this posted on or before the due date. And I'll share that with you as well, you know, as we start writing that and it goes. Other than that, Al had asked if we had received any of the zoning bylaw proposed changes.
Oh,
And I haven't, I saw them online today, so I did print them, but so you guys can have a copy of
Thank
what the
you.
proposed
Thank
changes
you.
are.
I have a question.
Okay?
As far as minutes and stuff, like, is Mallory or someone gonna do it based off the video, or how's that gonna work?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I've asked that of Sandra Nason twice and didn't really get an answer yet. So at this point now, it's critical that we have to have these.
Yeah.
And that's why
We have the
I've been
video.
taking, yes, right, we have the video and I'm taking minutes, I'm taking notes as I go along. just to make sure it gets done. It will be done one way or another, but,
I was just curious if there was a
yeah,
plan.
I'm not quite sure if they know what's going on either, cause she hasn't really responded quickly on that one.
Okay.
Is there anything else, that we need to discuss tonight?
Oh, we don't have minutes or any
We have,
other
we have
actions, I don't
no
think.
minutes to approve. Al's pretty good, he reads without the glasses.
I know,
Thanks.
new ones.
Ed Blanchard, 23 East Common Pond Road. Will the ZBA be setting a date for their next meeting or not?
Well, at this point, we have no next meeting.
Yeah, I was wondering whether you were gonna, whether you're gonna set one tonight or just wait and see what happens.
We're gonna wait and see what happens.
Thank you.
Yep. If there's no other business, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.